Hey, what's up? It's Mark at Alchemist.camp, where we learn Elixir and Phoenix by building things. Today, we're going to continue the Ecto Basics series. This will be the 12th episode, and it will build on what we went over last time about change sets, and specifically the change and cast functions. Last time, we did everything from the terminal. This time, we're going to actually build out a change set function on our user. First thing we need to do is import Ecto.Changeset, since we'll be using it now. And we're also going to alias the user struct itself. So this is the user module. We're aliasing the struct though, so that we can access it and pattern match against it, really. So we'll make a function called changeset. And what this will do is this will generate a change set for a user. We're going to have it pattern match against a user, and we're also going to give it some attributes. And first thing we'll do inside this change set is create a cast. So just a quick reminder. So cast will take the attributes to be changed. It'll take the user struct or whatever struct. And it will also take a list of allowed fields. So let's first say we'll make our attributes username B and email bob at example.com, and that's it. Then we'll have a list of allowed fields, and the allowed fields will include a few more. So we'll have a username, about, email, and we'll also have birth date. And since we're at it, let's also make a list of required fields, which requires all of those fields except for the about. Okay, we're not going to use the required fields though. We're just going to use allowed fields for now. And you may notice there is no birth date yet. We'll be adding it in a second though. So we'll cast the, actually we'll just pass the user into a pipeline where we cast user and the attributes we got in and the list of allowed fields. Let's add that field now. It's going to be a virtual field. We're going to have people enter a birth date that we don't store in the database. So it's entirely virtual, but we'll just check it to see if the person is old enough to use the Linkly site. So birth date, this is a date, and virtual true, which means it doesn't put anything in the database. We'll recompile. Now we can cast the user against that. We have no errors. This cast function returns a change set, and we'll pass it to our other validations. The next thing we'll validate is validate required, and we'll give it a list of required fields. So validate required takes a change set, and we've already passed it in through the pipeline. Now we're just going to pass in the required fields, which is all of these except for about. We can see what that would do in the terminal by taking this change set that we got back and passing it along. So validate required, change set, and required fields. And you can see now we have one error in our change set. Birth date can't be blank. Validation required. Our next validation is we'll validate the length of the username, and we'll require that it's at least 3. So min 3. So this should cause another failure for Bob. So we'll validate required. Let's just store the result of that last check as the change set. So we got back a change set that has an error. We can still pass that change set with the error onto the next step. So we can do validate length with the change set and username and minimum of 3. And you can see now we have multiple errors here. So I think that's enough to pretty much get the idea. So we'll just go back to our change set in the user module and add some more validations that are very common. So validate format is pretty useful. We can use that on our email address, and we can just pass it a regular expression, and we use a really simple one here. We're just, we're not making sure this is a sendable address. We will send an email to it to test, but we're just making sure they didn't type the username in the email field or something like that. Validate the format, and we can do unique constraint. So unique constraint email, and actually we probably want to do that for username as well. We can also make our own validation for something of whatever structure we choose. It's just validate change, and then we pass it the key that we want to check. In this case, it's going to be birth date. There is no validation built in for checking if a date is, a certain distance from another date. So we'll just make our own. We'll make a function that we call older than 13. And it's going to be a two arity function. We'll just define it down here. Older than 13. And the first argument is going to be just birth date. It has to be that struct exactly. Birth date. And the second argument is going to be some kind of date. So we'll validate that it is a date format, and we'll set it equal to birth date. Now what we want to do is we want to get the year out of that birth date. I'm just going to raise the terminal up a little bit here. We're going to get the year out of the birth date, and then we'll subtract 13 from it. So we can get today pretty easily with UTC date.UTC today. And this format can be converted into an Erlang style 3-tuple. So we can just do date.toEarl of today. And you see we've got these, we've just got this tuple. We could pattern match on that tuple and then just create a new date with date.fromEarl and give it a date that's 13 years ago. So minus 13 to 9, like so. Got to get the opening brace there. And so now we got a new date. And if we're sure that the date will be valid, and I am sure that 13 years before today will always be valid going forward, then we can just use an exclamation point and get it back without the OK tuple. So first we'll pattern match the year, the month, and the date out of today. So that's going to be date dot to Earl of date.utc today. Then we'll use that to get the min birth date, or just min date. Min date is going to be date.fromEarl year minus 13, month, and date. Then we'll use a case statement and check date.compare of the min date and the birth date. Case so this date.compare function will return a colon like this if it's less than, or colon GT. We'll just get an atom based on whether if it was less than or greater than or the same. So if we get greater than, then we will return an error. If it's less than, we'll return an error, and we'll say birth date must be old, or must be over 13 years old, like so. And if we get anything else, then we'll return an empty tuple, which means no errors. Save this and see if everything is working. Now, what's the issue here? The function call will not exceed user. Oh, because I have user passed in from the pipeline and then I typed it in again. All right, let's recompile. And let's try out this change set function from the user module. So we'll do user.changeset, user change set of just the user struct and the attributes, since the module itself knows what the allowed fields are. So now we've got a few errors. Username should be at least count letters long. Birth date can't be blank. Now let's change those attributes. And we'll say the attributes now equal, actually map.put ATRs birth date and that will be the date of 2010, the 8th month, and the would be this format, 2010-0811. Okay, so now we have new attributes, and now if we run it through the change set, we get birth date must be over 13 years old. So now we'll say ATRs equals ATTRs, username Bob. Now we've only got that one error, which is the birth date. So we'll try updating the birth date to something valid. Birth date and this user is valid. So that's a quick look at how you can use change sets to validate the information coming in. It doesn't even have to be something that's in the database. You can have a totally virtual field. We can use cast to filter down which attributes are valid input. And this could be really useful if maybe you don't want users to update their email after they've already created an account, because that's something that lots of spammers do. Maybe you have certain words you don't want people to use in their usernames, and validate the length of any input, the format of it. Then you can create just completely custom validations that you come up with on your own. Hope you found this useful, and I will see you next time.